Okay, so the scheduled bit of this is Q&A. We've done various things at this slot in FluteFling over the years. We've done some interviews with people. We've had some a very excellent talk from Monroe Gold a wee while ago. So all sorts of really nice background stuff going on, just to wind the day down a wee bit. So our three tutors have very generously agreed to subject themselves to a Q&A process. And those of you, thank you very much, those of you who've filled in the questions on the wee thing. There will be questions, there's a lot of questions, but there's a couple of them that are fit into kind of little themes. So we should be able to get through most of this in the allotted time scale. But I thought I would just first of all ask each of the guys, if you don't mind, to just give us a wee maybe 5-minute potted history of your own musical journey. How did you get here? Don't tell me you came on the bus. Would you mind starting, Kirsten, since you're there?
Yeah. Well, my musical journey really started in Canada when my parents immigrated there when I was 12. There was music in the house. My dad played the accordion, he played guitar, he sang. So there was music there. I had actually played fiddle before going to Canada. I hated it. I found myself in a school, middle school, and everybody had to play an instrument. Whether it was trombone or tuba, it was all woodwind, brass, percussion, and I was handed a flute, and oh my goodness, I was euphoric. I was like so happy I didn't play the fiddle anymore. And it's like I got a second chance, and I learned my music in a class of 30 other people playing, oboes, flutes. I don't know how the music teachers did it, but that's how we learned music, and I kept playing through high school in these big brass bands, or woodwind bands. And so as a Scottish expat, we fell in with some of the Irish expats, and some of my dad's friends had been playing Irish music. And I got to join a band called the Murphy Family, and we played stuff like I'll Tell Me Ma and The Ramblin' Rover, and I loved it. And I got to go to festivals, and I will never forget, I was about 15, and for the very first time I heard 2 wooden flute players playing in a session, jigs and reels, and I was blown away. I knew at that stage that's all I wanted to do, Now I didn't get a chance to do that until I moved back to Scotland, and as about maybe an 18, 19-year-old, I got a George Armstrong flute, and I started trying to teach myself how to play, and it was so hard to transition from classical to wooden. Took me decades. I'm still kind of learning. So yeah, that's my story.
We're all still learning.
Yeah.
And then you went to Ireland.
Yeah, I went to Ireland.
What was that?
Yeah, well, after I graduated from Glasgow, I did Scottish history and Celtic studies. I just went to play music, and I ended up doing a master's down there in music performance after a few years. And that led to me, I got lots of gigs with the dance shows. That was the heyday for the sort of Celtic Tiger, all the Irish dance shows. So I spent a few years playing all over the world, really. It was great for the dancers and all the stories.
Perhaps later.
And then, I was involved in UL. I was teaching there for a while, and I did actually, the very first online course.
UL is?
Sorry, University of Limerick. So I was lecturing there, and I devised the very first online course, which was online travel and music studies. And this was like 16 years ago. It's like, oh, okay, this can be done online. And it got me thinking. I was kind of involved in a PhD at the time, which thank goodness didn't. The Celtic Tiger crashed and my funding dried up, and honestly it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I really don't think I was that academically inclined. But this whole traveller module thing got me thinking, oh, I'd love to just teach the flute online. And so that's kind of what we did with the Online Academy of Irish Music. And it meant that we could live rurally and I can still teach.
And so that's what you do now most of the time?
Yeah.
Great, thanks very much for coming over. Hamish, people, lots of people talk about musical families and how important lineage is and all the rest of it, and there's some shades of worship over all that stuff, but Hamish Napier does genuinely come from a house where music was just there all the time. Yeah?
You might not think that when you hear my dad singing the Greenland Whale Fishes at 2 in the morning. But I was very lucky. My grandpa was really keen on folk music. He played the booty, and they lived next door to me. And my mum, she was in Scottish Opera, and she was in the chorus. And she was a music teacher in the house, and it was kind of like music exams and classical festival competitions. It's never something that I took very easily to. I was never very good at following the instructions. You know how like some people can do a menu, they'll do a recipe really easily. I'm not very good at that. So I think that kind of, yeah, it didn't come naturally to me, all the classical music that my mum was. I went to another teacher and all that, because parents can't teach their kids. Don't do it. Be like, oh, what's wrong with me that I can't teach my child? Mum and I nearly strangled each other.
I come to an arrangement with my son whereby he could ask me for advice anytime he liked, but I was not allowed to offer it. No unsolicited advice. No, I'm just joking, because I was very fortunate, because my mum, lots of singing and loads of singing and songs in the house with my granny and all that. And also, we had a really cool local music teacher called Christine Jackson. Who used to invite bands to come to the school, and we would. So we had Iron Horse, Kjolbeg, Brian McNeil. They came to our little school of 300 people in the middle of the Highlands. You know, it was not even a big school, you know. And they came and worked in the music departments, and they smoked cigarettes and had leather jackets, and you know, Wendy from Kjolbeg. You know, she had like kind of. She just had this electric blue harp. It was just so cool, great people, and I was like, I want to be a folk musician. And then we had a face Spey. My mum was the sort of the first chairman of that. That's the local summer camp for the area of Spey, so Strathspey, and we were really involved in that. I went to that every year. I loved it. I suppose it was like Cultus, you know, in Glasgow. A lot of people go to Cultus, I did classical flute. I was not very good at it. Just do it for exams and stuff, and never really. I remember like once trying to learn a James Galway tune, and it was on the record. He was playing the syrinx, and I was like, "Oh, I want to play it like that. That sounds much better." And the teacher was like, "No, don't play. You must play it exactly like this, otherwise you won't pass your exam." And I was like, "I don't like that idea of that." So anyway, I got really into trad music, and that just seemed to be the thing I liked much better, because you can change it up as you go. So I loved that, and getting to play music with your pals and all that. So that was cool. And went to Glasgow to do a science degree, and then while I was there I did loads and loads of playing, loads of sessions and stuff. And then joined a band called Backwood, and then I went, and then I did that for 7 years, and then I decided I'd like to try and learn jazz piano, so I had quite a cringe-worthy jazz beard for a while. I went over to Boston for a year and tried to learn jazz piano, but actually learned a lot of other stuff like music theory and composition in the process, and I came back to Glasgow, taught at the conservatoire there, and now I've been back home in the Highlands for 7 years, and I love being in a local community, and I do community events and a bit of online teaching, and I write tune commissions for people, and I play with a duo, and that was our 6th gig there, and I play in a duo with my wife as well, and I love trad music. Trad music's always been my thing. I love it. Not to take up more time just a wee bit, because it's not all about you, but the thing that I have thought for a number of years, that kind of sets you apart from a lot of other people that do the same kind of thing as you do. Nobody does exactly the same thing. But I've always thought that year in Boston, in Berkeley, resonates right through everything you've done since, the approach you take and things the way you do it. Is that a fair comment?
I think what I would say is that at one point I had a back in the moon rehearsal with our 4-piece band, and we got in Martin O'Neill, the Baran player, amazing Baran player from Glasgow, and Duncan Lyle, and they came in to make our band bigger. And they were like, "Oh, we'll do a counting, and that's a 1E and a 2E, and like they were going, you can do this, a 7th chord there, and what?" And I was like, "What are they talking about?" And they'd all been to Strathclyde to study music, and I was like, "Right, I need to be able to try and keep up with all this lingo and the way that they're amazing, you know, my sense of timing. So I was like, when I went there, you got lots of drills and sight singing and harmony and stuff like that to try and improve all these things, you know. And yeah, you're in classes all like, you know, for hours and hours every week, and eventually it starts to sink in. So it definitely helped, I would say. But it's because of people, you know, working with musicians that were so precise, like working with Mr. McFall's Chamber. I wrote some music for them, and they were so exact. The sheet music had to be written out just right, and the way they talked, I was like, oh, there's a whole world here. I need to study music to try and, you know, you're just gonna have. So that was it.
It's not the most common thing in traditional music, but it's becoming more common, and I think it's not that good thing to bring that kind of thing. I always remember Karen Marshall saying at the FluteFling Classic, where they did that, the still course, you know, the composers course, and gave the music to I think the players were from the SCO maybe or something like that, and she gave the music and they looked through it. That's good, yeah, great. What kind of quavers would you like? And it's the thing, you know, do you want them swung, do you want them straight, you know, it's not all just about exactly what's on the paper. They've got their expressive techniques. She said it was one of the best things ever. I'm feeling it now, bigger. Freya?
Hello.
Where do you come from?
Where do I come from? Come from the Borders, and started playing the whistle when I was about 9 in the school monster band. And I got chucked out of the school monster band because I played the whistle with the wrong hands. So then I joined the small hall band, which I don't know, some of you might know. It's a small hall ceilidh band. It's a very welcoming family community ceilidh band, and kind of just went from there really. I guess I saw Flute play at Knockengart when I was 11, and I had that moment as well. I was like, I want to do that. Yeah, it's like they're cool. And I also started playing the fiddle quite young and hated it. I've since then learned Irish music on the fiddle. I love it, so I've gone back to it. But yeah, I guess my story is very like I've never done classical music, which you might be surprised because I play this old silver flute. But I just never took to it. People tried to teach me it, and I was just not interested. So, but I didn't really have another option. I guess my mum didn't know about wind flutes. Got given the silver flute at school for free, so she didn't have to buy another instrument. So I just kind of learned stuff on that flute and realised I really quite like playing tunes in different keys, and spent a while trying to kind of emulate the wooden flute sound. So yeah, I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to do these days, is kind of promote the fact that you can play sharp music on the silver flute. It is different, but it's not impossible. And what else do I do? I went to study music in Newcastle 10 years ago, which is a bit scary.
And that's a trad music course, yeah?
That's the trad music course in Newcastle. It was pretty big in this time. It's kind of diminished. It's quite significantly now because of the fees in England. So we don't get any Scots going in, which is it's just a shame, to be honest. But yeah, when I was there, there was a lot of people and a lot of really amazing tutors. Desi Wilkinson, he was teaching me. And the one thing he said, I'm hoping no one's going to ask questions about this. The one thing he said was, stop tonguing. Stop it altogether. So obviously you learn kind of tunes and you think you're kind of, if you read the music. So I took it all out and then put it back in again. Trying to think of what else to talk about.
That's pretty good. So anyway, you tell us you've just released a one from UCD.
I have, yeah. I have just
very
released
nice,
an album. I got some funding, which was unexpected and brilliant, to promote the use of instruments that aren't commonly trad instruments. So it's myself, a bit of sax from Freya, and some random kind of tuned percussion instruments that you have maybe never seen before.
If you're unfamiliar with the tongue drum, great pleasure to meet you.
Thanks. I don't play it, my instrument plays it. But, so yeah, that's about to be released. And I guess I'm kind of at maybe not at the start of my career journey. I've been teaching for a long time, but maybe the start of more of a performance. Hopefully, we'll see, I guess. Yeah, and hopefully, if anyone listens to the album, it'll be released officially. There's previews out there, but it'll be officially released on the 21st June, solstice.
So my hope is that this will evolve into more of a panel type discussion in a few minutes. Thanks very much to everybody that put questions up on the board. It's not surprising that some of the questions are on similar type of things, so there's little themes of developed out of the questions. So rather than doing each individual question, we'll maybe look at those themes. And the first one here is still a kind of an individual answer for each of you. The three bits of paper here say, to all three tutors, who is your main inspiration as a flute player? The middle one says, who is your personal flute hero and why? And the top one says, what is the best advice you've ever been given on flute playing? Who wants to jump in on that? We'll start with the heroes. Who's your hero? Who was it when you started? Was it those two guys in Canada?
Oh, no, they were two women and they were actually very influential, but no, I'd say my favourite flute player would have to be Congo Grada. I love the rhythm. I love that rhythmic style of playing, and actually when I was younger, when I was at 19 or 20, I transcribed it in ABC, like his whole CD. I know, it's ridiculous. Top of the loom, I think it was. Top of the coom. And I would say I'm a total nerd, but I had to learn where he was breathing. And so like I put all the breath marks in, and practice play along with it. That's how I used to love playing along with my heroes on CD.
I guess mine probably. I mean, I don't really play like her, but at that first kind of gig, Sarah Allen, doing all those amazing harmonies and percussive stuff on Fluke albums. What a woman.
Yeah. She's great. She's a lovely person.
Yeah, I've never actually met her.
Oh, she's an absolute gem.
She's a great tune writer. Her tunes are brilliant.
You had somebody playing on the river, did you?
Sarah Hayes. Yeah, playing like alto flute. Yeah, she's got a great swing.
Is that silver alto flute?
Yeah. She's a great swing to her.
Hero?
I think I'd like to have two.
I suppose.
Brian Finnegan and Michael Goldrick, because I just listened to them an unhealthy amount of music. I remember a few tracks from a live gig in Finhorn, listening to it overnight, just in my ears. And the same thing, like somebody had written out a whole Michael McGoldrick album, they'd stored it all out at a party. I turned up at a session, and they were like, "Here's the sheet music," and I was like, "Oh my goodness, I've been listening to this tape, like a tape on repeat." And I ran home and ran it through the fax machine, copied it all. But then I realised they were all in F because I was playing F whistles and all that. So I actually had to learn them by ear, like I had to, and I realised that you could, and I didn't know you could do that without sheet music. So it's a big breakthrough. And it was that Morning Rory album, and that came out that was '95, and then Flute Flatfish came out shortly after that, and they're still love those up. I still go back to them in detail. Playing is crazy.
What about the advice? The best bit of advice you've ever been given?
It's bad that I can't remember it.
I think I mentioned mine before
Okay.
with Desi. Yeah, just to I mean, it depends on what style of tune I'm playing, but that really helps for getting Irish stuff. Sure. I use a lot more tongue in Scottish tunes.
I mean, it's the whole tonguing thing in traditional flute play is a debate in itself. We've had a huge amount. I think about, there's an analogy I saw about vibrato one time, and I think that it kind of applies to tonguing as well. It's like the salt in your soup. You don't want no salt in your soup.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't want to take a whole bag of salt and shove it in your soup.
Well, I think I shared with the classes today, maybe all three of them, maybe just one or two. And Seamus Tansey, always used to say, a good Irish traditional flute player has to be able to hold the low D for 20 seconds. So to go and practice doing that with a timer and see if you can increase it bit by bit.
Doesn't sound like much, but
Yeah.
20 minutes, yeah, take it.
20 seconds.
I mean, I'm just thinking of lots of little tiny bits of advice from people, but I remember Simon McCarroll, he's a really good piper, and I used to play in a band with him back in the moon, and I think I got maybe a bit of unsolicited advice, when you don't want to hear it, but he was like, yeah, you're playing ahead of the beat, and he's like, you're speeding up, and your fingers are all over the place, and your rolls are rushed, and you're meant to do your strikes and your cuts on top of the notes, not in between. And I was like, oh my goodness. It was a bit like a freight train, but I must have been, he must have thought I needed a wee bit of a kick up the bum. So it was really a lot to take on board, but it was really useful because it meant I had something to work on. And he was coming at it from the point of view of piping, and I hadn't done any of that before. So it was like, and then it was nice because he was like, that's sounding good. I was getting nice feedback from him after. So I took it on board, even though I didn't want to hear it. When I was 18, I was like, I want to hear that.
I did have the dubious pleasure of having Simon as a flute pupil for a while when he was in the academy. I think we did. I do remember some occasions when he brought a flute to lessons, but mainly he turned up his uilleann pipes, which was kind of yeah, it's very he's another quite analytical thinker. This business of the analytical approach is not that common in traditional music, but it's getting more common. What you were talking about scoring out the whole thing is a class technique that the whole jazz musicians would know called transcription and analysis. I mean, why do we do it? We do it to understand what these great people in the past did so that we can build on it. It's a real thing, and it's nice to see it. Got some more questions on the bit of paper, but I've talked to Isabel. Was it the first break, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she came over to ask Kirsten an absolutely fantastic question, which I hope she can now remember.
He said save it for later. What I wanted to know was, I taught myself to play the flute at middle age. I never played at school, never had lessons or anything, so everything I do is my own. And, is it worth 20 years down the line ever thinking about having a lesson to change things that I'm not doing very well, or should I just go with it?
Well, I think my reply to you is like, how deep do you want to go into the tunes? Because you don't have to go, but it's your choice. You can just play, you don't have to analyse at all. You can keep things at very surface level, or you can go down deep. And I use the analysis. I play guitar. I love it. I've got about 14 chords, and people often say to me, I don't often play out, maybe if I've had a few drinks and singing a song. And people say, why don't you take some lessons, Kirsten? Don't you have a website with some great guitar lessons on it? I'm really just not interested in it. I just want to enjoy this. I've learned enough. So it's up to, I just want to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Not be too analytical, that's fine.
I think sometimes it's handy as when you're learning something to divide it into short term, medium term, and long term, right? So when you're learning things rather than some all-encompassing thing. So let's say there's something that that you're doing that somebody says you need to change. Well, you can say, well, I do need to change that because of a long-term goal. So you find a way to work on it. Like let's say it's a roll or something. So what you do is when you go down to the session, you just play it in your usual way, but when you're at home, you can practice the roll. you know, but it doesn't mean that you have to not play at the session. You know, just do a short-term version of it at the session, but go home and practice the long-term version. And that's like, and then you can develop that way. You know, I know it's like compartmentalizing, but I mean, it means that, you know, you feel like, because there's different parts of your play that develop at different speeds. It's not just like you get better. There's like things that take ages, and there's things that are actually a quick fix. And so that's what my advice is, that you can, as you learn things, decide which things are going to take a bit of work and which things you can change right away.
I guess my advice is you probably know already. You know, and hear what if you feel like you need it, or if you're happy where you're at, I think.
In that conversation, which I was lucky enough to be part of, Kirsten said something that's now stuck with me, and I think quite a lovely thing actually. She said, "Are you deeply unhappy with what you're doing?"
No, I'm fine where I am.
Problem solved.
As long as I'm not upset with other people at the session.
I think you would know if that was
Yes.
most people would like you. No, you know, everybody's on their own journey, man. And everybody's come at it. That thing about learning late in life is an interesting thing to discuss, and I've worked quite a lot with adult learners, and they can be difficult, you know, sometimes. Because kids don't care, kids don't have fear. You know, they just fly in and they don't really bother, it sounds like. I had one particularly memorable, quite elderly gentleman, man in his early 70s, who decided he would start learning to play the bagpipes. And his catchphrase in group lessons, and when we go around the table, you do it, and come here, man. And I have to show him again, and he always said, it doesn't sound like that when I play it. So, you know, it's where you are. And every single person in the room is on that journey in a different stage. So, here's a one, let's try this one. On this topic of learning and where you are. What aspect of your playing would you most like to improve? We're all still learning.
I think I told one of the groups here today, I've been trying to use glottal stops a lot more in my playing. It's a new thing for me, and yeah, sometimes I vocalise when I do it, and maybe grunt and murmur just a bit. I know we were doing an exercise around that, but I've become a bit self-conscious about that recently. And yeah.
I think for me, improvisation.
Oh yeah.
I think that's probably where I'm trying to go. I really like variations in tunes. I love doing that. Sometimes naturally, sometimes forced. But having more of a kind of improv sections in arrangements, I feel like I need more confidence to do that.
Usually hang grenade then for the man that went to Berkeley. Can improvisation be taught?
Improvisation under certain conditions, like improvising over somebody singing like the Sky Boats Over or something, it's like what key is it in, what pentatonic scale, play and rest patterns. You can teach that in a really nice way. It was really fun book to learn. But I wouldn't know how to teach improvisation in like a free music way, but only for certain situations. I think
there are skills, there are techniques too, you know, there are things you need to know, and you know those things with improvisation. It's not like you need sprinkle fairy dust, you know. You can get it all.
I think I learned to play. In some ways, I tried to learn to run before I could walk with a flute. So trying to play all these fancy veering away from the tune and all that stuff, and actually what I really probably should have, or I didn't really know I had to learn, was the stuff that I love hearing Steph Jeremiah do, or June McCormick or whatever, and that's playing a tune, and then like the second time through, there's these lovely little variations and just little subtle things. And like when you look at the transcript as a Matt Malloy, you see like there's a roll there the first time and then there isn't the second, and it's just like gorgeous. It's like absolute beauty, you know. So I've been listening to loads of like June McGormick's books and working my way through, playing along with him and trying to just get that sort of discipline into my playing instead of play all these wild high going away from the tune. It's just like rein it in a bit, and that's been like really a joy to sort of see all these bits of beauty in this subtlety that's like, you know, that's been, yeah.
You talked a bit about this in your introduction. There's two questions here that are kind of related to each other. So the first one says, question for Freya, when playing on the silver flute, which techniques make use of the specific characteristics of the silver flute and its keys? And can you give us examples? Phil, thank you. And this other one here, which is the same kind of question but on the wooden side of things, is just says, can you comment on keys versus keyless besides the obvious chromatics? So again, we're talking about stylistic characteristics of metal flute, which is all keys, and then the key that what you do with the keys of the wooden flute that you would even have if you were on a keyless wooden flute.
Just figuring where to start. Yeah, I think I talked about some of the, like, for example, the rolls on the top hand, being able to do the thumb key instead of thumb key, use your first finger, which is much more versatile. I talked a little bit in the class about the trill keys, particularly the C's and the higher notes as well. I don't know if I should get off it and just
Let's say, can you give us examples?
Yeah.
Oh, great. I think particularly having the chromatic, the sharps and the flats and the black keys on the piano, I find that the most useful thing. Otherwise, I mostly just do what I do on the whistle, on the same as the flute, really. But where did I get to?
Well, the thumb key was one of the things.
Yeah. I mean,
trill keys a wee bit as well.
I think the thumb key, most of you saw that anyway, for the rolls. Which is just a little bit kind of snappier than using the. I never use it, so it's rubbish. Then I did demonstrate to the last class the trill keys, which are so tiny little taps. Like, you definitely don't want to press them, because if you press them, it sounds like. So it's very, very, very slight movements. The F sharp. And I know I'm just going over the ones that you already know about, but for anyone who doesn't know, using that F sharp is much smoother for a roll than using that F sharp. So an F sharp roll, obviously in the whistle or the wooden flute, you'd be doing it like that, but you're doing it like that, so it's just a tiny adjustment, really.
We were wondering if you're not familiar with the metal flute, that note in the metal flute is F natural.
Yes, that's F natural.
It's very different to stroke.
So like just things like the B flat, the easy B flat. That's it. Well, I couldn't imagine not having a B flat because I play so many tunes in G minor or C minor or something, and to have to do a different key for a B flat instead of having that on there. So it just makes all your B flats mean you can do exactly the same ornaments as you would on your B, which is fantastic. I love using the G sharp key for slides, mostly, always. I love
You mean
using
slides the tunes or slides the ornament?
the ornament. I just do slides just to take
Oh,
it.
it's just slides the tune, yes. Not indeed.
But I'm just trying to like think of things anymore. Having the open holes, I find, pretty useful can actually do this actual slides, but it's not essential. I've got a non-audible flute where you don't have to do. You just can hold it a little bit longer, and just make the same movement. The holds do, I think, they do help. Where else am I at? I think that's probably enough.
One signal difference, huge difference with the home system flute was the accessibility of the octave.
Yes.
That was what the classical players use all the time. Do you ever find yourself spending any time up there?
A wee bit. Did today in class because I was teaching that tune, which you can do either the first octave or the second octave. And yet, that's why I think only in the last class, not the first one or the second one, I was demonstrating that high D with the trill keys. Which is lovely. I'm sure I've got plenty more. I just trying to hardly. But I basically I've learned lots of Irish ornaments on the whistle. I'm not from a piping place at all, but trying to basically just do exactly the same thing as much as possible.
There is also sort of a middle way, and that is a wooden rod flute.
Yeah.
Which again is a different sound.
Yeah.
But it just takes some of that sharpness away, or some of them do. I mean, they're all different. But we always talk about metal flutes, and we talk about wooden Irish flutes. But there are things in the middle, aren't there?
I do actually own a wooden board flute. I find it not as responsive as this one, so I don't play it as often. Personally, I think the main difference is the tone, you're right, and the way I've tried to get around that is by opening the embouchure to try and get that kind of break tone, you know the break between the octaves. So you want to try and get that buzz, which is nearly going over the break, but not quite. And that's as far as I can get to authentic sound.
Not about this business of key flutes. Does anybody have to say about keys versus keyless?
Well, every key you get on the flute, like I have a 6-key flute, but you just have to remember that every extra key you're going to get is a potential place for a leak. Unless you're really going to use them. I do really use my keys, but a lot of people, especially a lot of learners, they might get 6-8 keys and never use them because you can get away with an awful lot of track music with a keyless flute.
I would say get a good keyless one rather than spending money on the keys. A big shout out to George Ormiston here because his keys are fantastic. They're just the way that they curve around and they're just so in tune and lovely to play. I started out with a keyless George flute and then I sent it back to him and I got 2 keys put on and then I got 4 and then I bought a new flute and it had 6 and then I wrote loads of tunes that used loads of silver keys on them and then I just started playing less and less tunes that needed them and I've ended up, I don't know if you would call it full circle, but I've ended up actually playing quite a lot of non-keyed flutes. So yeah, I think it's fun. It's fun, but sometimes the keyed stuff can end up, this is just my opinion, but sometimes the stuff with lots and lots of keys in it can end up sounding a wee bit showy-offy or something. That's just the way that I was doing it, but it was like, oh look at me, I can play in E major, but why not just play the same key, just play the same tune in D on an E flute, and you might have more options of beautiful stuff you can do. So, but then, there's loads of different shouts. I totally respect everyone's opinion on it, but for me, the simplicity of just a bit of bare wood, that kind of idea, and just playing. For me, I would spend the money on having different keyless flutes. That's what I would say to folk now. The G sharp key is pretty handy.
Well, I would say that's what I was going to if we get into Scottish music, there's such a large amount of fiddle repertoire in the key of A that the G sharp key there comes in very handy. It's about defining the use, you know, it comes back to your question of where you're at and what journey you're on, and do you at this point in your, do you need those keys? You probably don't, so don't bother.
I would say order of preference, like the G sharps in my, I just think that's the most important. And the one after that, I would say would maybe be the little F natural. Then I would say the E flat one after that, and then the B flat, and then the long F, and then at the bottom of the line I would say the long C. It wouldn't bother.
But some people would tell you they want the long C first, because they don't like cross-fingered C naturals, so there's a whole...
Yeah, that's the order I would
It's all about, it's just defining what you need and what your journey's at, and the reason I think going quite nicely from that is when you start to talk about style and you know, Scottish, that kind of Scottish repertoire questions, 3 bits of paper here. Scottish and Irish, what's the difference on flute and whistle? Are there different Scottish flute styles? And what differences in playing techniques, for example, ornamentation, do you advise for playing Scottish tunes compared to Irish to make tunes sound Scottish rather than Irish? That came easy for the rest of the weekend. Well, as a Scottish person living in Ireland,
I don't know if I am, because I'm so immersed in Irish music. I can note the difference. It came up today in class, the burls. Somebody was saying, I think maybe they'd been taught a burl and the rest knew about it. And I wasn't very familiar with it.
Me neither. I think what happens in Irish music is you get a lot of, this is a sweeping statement of the day, but you got a lot of G and D tunes, and in Scotland you tend to get a lot of D and A tunes, sort of, as if like in Ireland you get a lot of 1 sharp and 2 sharps, and in Scotland you get a lot of 2 and 3 sharps. It's sort of, right? I know there's loads of exceptions, because I mean, what about the Fox Hunter reel? She does that banger, and that's an A, and that's Irish. You know, and then you got...
Put in G in there.
Put in G.
Oh, yeah, that's okay.
One of the big showpiece things in our session in Glasgow, we played in G a couple of times, then walked the A.
Brilliant. Yeah,
you can actually play it, and if you play it in G, on the flute, well, in a whistle, you want to play it in A, just move your fingers off one hole.
That's good.
Try it.
Yeah, that's it. I think that somebody mentioned regional styles. I mean, and that is really a big deal in Ireland, when you've got lots of different regions and different like key teachers and key players in all these amazing little pockets all over Ireland. It's incredible. But meanwhile, in Scotland, what happened for so long? We didn't have flute players in every pocket of Scotland. So, I mean, can you really talk about regional flute styles in Scotland? I don't think so. I think it doesn't matter. It's not an important thing to discuss. Whereas in Ireland, there maybe are some regional styles for, you know, I've heard about Sligo fiddle playing, for example, and stuff like that. So there are regional styles which are important. But in terms of regions in Scotland for flute playing, I've not really heard about that. But
we're still reintroducing it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's and that's just really exciting. And it's to do with like highly influential players, you know, like, so that's really what, it's less about geography and more about, you know, a really great player and folk wanting to emulate that, you know, like a lot of, maybe the younger generation are listening to a lot of Ross Aids, they play the whistle, you know, that's amazing, driving, exciting whistle sound, really big whistle sound, with lots of kind of Irish grace notes, you know, maybe it's slightly linked to like Ian McDonald's playing and all that. That's, people are like, oh cool, I want to learn the whistle, I want to play like that, you know. It's not a regional style, it's more pipe influence style.
You mentioned Ian McFarlane last night. If you're not familiar with Ian McFarlane, try and get familiar with his music, he's a great hero. And I remember having a conversation with Ian about regional fiddle styles in Scotland. And lots of people would tell you there's the North East, the West Coast and all the rest. Ian's quite sceptical of all that stuff. He said pretty much the same as what you just said, that it comes down to one great player, no matter where they live somewhere like that, and people say, right, well that's the role I want to follow.
It's the same in Ireland as well, then if you think it's slang music, you're going to go back to the use of Michael Coleman in terms of the flute. Later when you've got John McKenna, sort of early recordings. These guys are recording flute music Irish flute music was being recorded at the beginning of the last century, almost as soon as the recording came in. Never happened in Scotland for some reason.
Oh, yeah.
The first full CD of Scottish flute music I'm aware of, traditional Scottish, was Chris Norman.
Yeah.
If you know this question, and that was like 20 years ago. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, he was a big influence, I think. When it was really, I suppose, we played with Alistair Fraser, great Scottish fiddle player. He came through in the 1980s and affected a lot of people. In fact, I remember Carl Stewart going to a workshop with Chris Norman, and that affected him. And Carl's probably a big influence these days.
Chris Norman did a workshop in Boston early on at the start of the project, and I changed my flute playing on the spot.
Yeah.
Because of what Chris Norman said. Going back to the best bit of advice of the flute playing lobby, I'll never forget that's totally enshrined. When he talked about, and one of the things I've got this, we said a couple of minutes ago about different styles are influenced by the repertoire we play. There's not really in Scotland a flute repertoire, so people that play fiddle tunes, you people that play pipe tunes, and those are where the you've just alluded to, Rosie, and that's where the differences are, rather than regional things that are influenced by the repertoire and where the repertoire comes from. But what Chris said was that he tended to treat, when he was playing Scottish music, he looked to the fiddle, which was obviously a very indigenous Scottish instrument and what we asked a lot. And he thought of our fingers on the flute as being the left hand of the fiddle, and embouchure phrasing, all of that, as being the bow. And just, as soon, the words were no longer out of his mouth, and it just light bulb exploded in the top of my head, and it just literally changed the way I played the flute on the spot. Because up until that point in time, I'd learned from Irish because we're having a Scottish players to learn from, and I wasn't using my tongue hardly at all. Everything was very legato and lots of finger stuff because of the pipey stuff. But as soon as Chris said that, I'm doing this all wrong.
It's funny actually, I remember very early on getting a lesson from Mel Keegan, and he said that I played the flute like a fiddle player.
No.
So maybe he was referring to that.
Well, I know I play the flute and whistle like a piper.
Uh-huh.
And my great mission in life has been to try not to sound like a piper player.
I think there's a big shout out to Ian MacDonald as well,
Okay.
because he found a Ribble and Rose flute in an attic in London. And the lady was like, "You can have this." He's like, "Oh my goodness!" And then just playing absolutely brilliantly, sort of emulating the Matt Malloy style, being able to play that kind of stuff, but then also having this really refined piping stuff, and then all these Gaelic tunes suddenly happening, and it's just somebody of that level of skill and patience and creativity, and then they just take the instrument and just run with it,
It's people that make the difference. It's not, music is tied to landscape and country and all the rest of it. We all know that stuff, and people are fortunate. Playing tunes in the trees. By the way, there's a lot of tree stuff on Freya's album as well. We should have a tree chat. But it's people.
Let's change the direction of the agenda.
It is people. Rather than looking at the bits of the country and history, it's people that make the difference.
Can I just say a big shout out? It's events like this where everybody gets a chance to chat, play, and then it's also it's giving younger people the opportunity to play, and also giving them sessions to play in, and then encouraging them to play in bands or bringing teachers into a school. All of that stuff is what really matters, and it doesn't really matter particularly what it is, as long as there's loads of enthusiasm and encouragement. And sometimes I've seen youth projects and I'm going, this is going the wrong way, they're not learning roles, they're doing but it's that ends up working really beautifully because they like it, and that's the most important thing, is just having fun. And eventually, they can, when they're ready, they can learn all the technical stuff and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's...
Well, on that note then, let's take a final question, a bombshell from Mr. J. Crawford Esquire. What could or should FluteFling do differently next year? That's to the rest of you as well. Give me your feedback first.
I know one thing, it's not do you know when we were all the students were moving around I think it probably would have been better if the teachers moved from the bed.
Would you happy carry a couple around you?
No, I just felt sorry for them all packing up all their stuff. stuff and put it back in their cases. That's the only thing.
Great idea.
You gentle soul.
I always think it's nice when folk eat together. I do like that, just sitting around a table and get a chance to eat and chat to folks.
So develop a catering service.
Multi-sound.
Ross Avery,
Ross.
Yeah, that's the answer.
What is it?
Cooks, decent subs.
Oh yeah, you don't hire them to play.
No. Because they found there's not gatherings now, he cooks, he's a chef. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing about the girls to think about as well. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, you're terrifically